I'd like to call the regular meeting of the Butte-Silver Council of Commissioners for September 2nd, 2015 to order. Clerk, can we please have a roll call?
We have 11 present and 1 absent.
Okay, let the record show that Commissioner Walker is excused for this evening. Commissioner Henderson, can you lead us in the prayer and the Pledge of Allegiance?
Almighty God, we implore you, look upon us and guide us this night as we make decisions which so greatly affect our community of Butte-Silver Bowl. Direct our thoughts, words, and deeds so that we please you and best serve our fellow citizens. Amen.
Amen. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
At this point, I would open the microphone for any public comments for items that are on tonight's consent agenda.
R. Bannerov, 2601 Grand Avenue, resident and interim facilitator for the Greeley Neighborhood Community Coalition. Reference Section 1, Consent Agenda, B1, Communications, Communication 15406, informing Council of survey results from residents in Butte-Silver Bowl. Please note that we talked to about 90 people. 6% of them said they preferred the Butte-Silver Bowl Council of Commissioners continue to ignore the requirements of the Butte-Silver Bowl City County Charter. 12% said they had to think about it. And 82% said they preferred that this Butte-Silver Bowl Council of Commissioners call for, authorize, and recognize advisory community councils. Speaking further as an interim facilitator for the Greeley Neighborhood Community Coalition, Section 1, Consent Agenda, B1, Communications, Communication 15405. We do not understand the description of the request you have before you. Please note that this is a communication requesting that this Council of Commissioners call for, authorize, and recognize community councils to advise this Council of Commissioners in accordance with the County Attorney's Community Council's interpretive description of the Butte-Silver Bowl City County Charter. This is a matter of no concern to the executive branch of our government. This is an issue only between the people and our elected legislative representatives. That being said, we the people do want to thank the chief executive for being so adamant a couple weeks ago about we must adhere to and obey the constitutional law of the Butte-Silver Bowl City County Charter. It is in this Butte-Silver Bowl City County Charter that this legislative branch of government, not the executive branch of our government, has been given the duty and the power to authorize community councils to advise this Council of Commissioners. 82% of the people we talked to said it is time for this branch of the local government to quit ignoring the Butte-Silver Bowl City County Charter and to call for, authorize, and recognize community councils to advise this Council of Commissioners on major policy decisions. They want this body to call for fact-finding community councils and for members of this body to hold town hall opinion gatherings and coalescing listening sessions prior to formulation of policy decision recommendations. Please do not give me that old BS that the people are not interested. It is your job to encourage them to become interested. I did not hear the commissioner the other night say, wait, I want your opinion, when the people headed for the door. Please do not give me the old BS that you do not know anyone that would be willing to serve on a community council. I do not hear the commissioner say, wait, excuse me. This council, you do the same as the CEO does in appointing an ad hoc committee. You put out an announcement, and when you have 3 volunteers or more, this council of commissioners authorize a community council according to the procedures of your rules committee. You do not need a big ordinance. You only need a few simple internal rules. Again, this is not another level of government. This is the normal level of government in a democracy. If you are unable to amend the request so it reads as the request was in the letter, then we will have to submit another communication with another 100 signatures from other people. As a resident, I would like to comment on 2 more items. Section 4, Council Bill 15-13, Ordinance number 15-13, litter control. I again must strongly object to the procedure used by this council without this council first holding town hall meetings or public listening sessions in neighborhoods before they formulated the ordinance. Section 1, consent agenda, A1, committee of the whole report, section 16, communication 15-393. For once, I agree with you, Commissioner Henderson. I don't get it either. Historic preservation for the sake of historic preservation. I am like my barber. Show me the dollars. Show me the greater Butte-Silver Bowl heritage community focusing on utilizing our heritage assets to bring preservation dollars into the community and to increase customer flow to the businesses in our community. But I also do not get it. Why have a historic preservation ordinance if you are not at least going to implement its intent? But most of all, I do not get it. If you have a council rules that say when a member of the public is called on by a member of the council, then that member of the public may speak on a matter being deliberated by this council. I rise to a point of order. If that is not your rule of procedure, then please clarify your rules and post them on the door so we the people know what to expect when we come before you. To use a point of order to squelch comment seemed to be completely inappropriate. Calling for a question might have been acceptable, but to call a point of order and then state this is the time for the council to discuss indicates a complete disrespect and disdain for the opinion of the people. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bandram. Is there any other public comment on matters on tonight's agenda? Seeing none, I would move to the approval of the minutes for the regular meeting on August 19th, 2015. Commissioner Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. At this time, I move to approve the minutes of the regular meeting that occurred on August 19th, 2015.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there anything on the question? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Motion passes. We have 2 communications and 2 resolutions that need to be added to tonight's agenda for emergency purposes. Commissioner Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. Actually, we have 3 communications, but I'll start with one. In accordance with the provisions of Section 6 of Rule 6 of the Rules of Business of the Council of Commissioners of the City and County of Butte-Silver Bow, State of Montana, the council hereby finds that an emergency condition exists which requires that the council rules be suspended to allow communication number 15-425 to be added to the agenda of tonight's regular meeting of the council. And in brief, the reason for the suspension is as follows. This communication is from J.P. Gallagher, our Parks and Recreation Director, and Matt Boyle on behalf of the Original Festival, requesting the council authorize the annual Original Festival event to be held at the Original Mine Yard on September 11th and 12th. And this communication was not submitted in the time of our normal closure of the agenda. So for this reason, I will move to approve the suspension of the rules to consider placing council communication number 15-425 on the agenda tonight, September 2nd, 2015.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to add this item to the agenda, which will be done under Section 2, communications to be read and acted upon. This is a roll call vote, so please cast your votes. All votes in. Clerk, can you please record?
11 yea and 0 nay.
Okay, item added. Commissioner Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. The second item here is, again, in accordance with the provisions of Section 6 of Rule 6 of the Rules of Business of the Council of Commissioners. We hereby find another emergency condition existing, which requires that the council rules be suspended to allow communications number 15, or communication number 15-426, and resolutions 15-36 and 15-40 to be added to tonight's agenda. And again, in brief, the reason for the suspension is as follows. Communication 15-426 is a communication from Kathy Maloney, County Superintendent of Schools, requesting the council reconsider resolutions 15-36 and 15-40. Specifically, Ms. Maloney was requesting the tax levy amounts for the various countywide funds of the school district within the city county as set forth in that resolution 15-36 be corrected. And again, for the second one, another correction needs to be made, and we need to have these approved. So at this time, in order to follow up with that process, I need to make a motion to approve suspension of the rules to consider placing council communication number 15-426 and resolution 15-36 and 15-40 on tonight's agenda, September 2nd, 2015.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to add these items, which if they are successful, will be put at Section 5 under the suspension of the rules for final passage section. This is a roll call vote. Please cast your votes. All votes in. Clerk, can you please record?
10 yea and 1 nay.
Okay, resolution or communications added. Commissioner Shaw. That concludes our items that were added to the agenda, which moves us into the chief executive report. I'll try and keep things brief. I would like to start by calling on Pastor Sandy Van Zyl, who wants to invite and notify us of a walk out of the darkness to bring awareness to suicide prevention. So,
Thank you
Pastor
very much.
Sandy.
I'm serving on the Butte-Silver Suicide Prevention Task Force representing the Ministerial Association. And one of the activities that we have been working on is an Out of the Darkness Suicide Prevention and Awareness Walk. I have a flyer here for each of you. And I just want to invite you to attend. We're hoping to have a little bit more press in the paper in the next week or so. And of course, now it'll be on the radio. But it is Sunday, September 13th, and it is to raise funds for the American Federation of Suicide Prevention. Some of that money stays locally, some of that goes to the National Organization for Education and Advocacy. So I have some information about what the American Federation for Suicide Prevention does, and then also an invitation to attend or to donate or to spread the word about this walk on Sunday the 13th. So if I can leave that with you all here, and thank you, Chief Executive Vincent, for giving me a moment.
Thank you, Pastor Sandy. Okay, moving on, I would just draw everyone's attention to a couple of events. One being the Field of Honor, which is normally held over the Independence Day holiday. The Butte Exchange Club, in collaboration with the United Veterans Council and Butte-Silver have moved that commemorative event to the 9/11 commemorative date. And so that they're still in need of volunteers for helping place those flags, as well as take them down at the field that is just next to the Belmont headframe up there. And so when you make your way out tonight, there's a table that's in the rotunda where there are some forms. I mean, even an hour of your time would help them put together this great event. As with any event, when you change time periods, there's a need to draw additional attention to it so that more people show up. And I think that's why I'm bringing it to everyone's attention. They are having a lot of volunteers sign up, but they're still in need of more. I would also announce that the speaker that they have this year for the 9/11 commemorative event, which is actually going to be at 5:30 at the Field of Honor on September 10th, is retired Lieutenant Kevin Shea, who was one of the first firefighters on the scene at the 9/11 disaster. He retired as a result of the injuries that he sustained in his service on that horrific day. And this will be the first time that Mr. Shea has spoken about his experiences. And I think it will really, really hit home the severity and the importance of us commemorating and remembering 9/11 every year. There's a communication tonight to approve the parade route in collaboration with the Exchange Club and Ed Fisher and Chief Jeff Miller. We've been working with and Sheriff Lester, we've been working with the school district. And this year we're adding a little different twist in order to bring more attention to the 9/11 event. That parade will be traveling by the majority of our Butte schools, both Butte High and Butte Central. And so that will be on September 11th itself. So again, the Exchange Club is still in need of volunteers. So grab one of the forms on your way out and give an hour and make a point to go to the opening ceremony to hear Mr. Shea talk about his experiences in the 9/11 event. Another big upcoming event is the same day as the Out of the Darkness Community Walk. Later that day is the 50-year commemoration of the Vietnam War. That will be at our archives, and there's an exhibit that will be unveiled that day, as well as some words by our local veterans who served in that war. And I missed last week's debut, but I just wanted to extend a thank you to the Butte America Radio Foundation for getting us broadcasted live from the third floor. It's Wednesday night. And it will be followed up soon now with the approval of the budget that the these will be streamed live video here in the next few months as we move ahead with that project. So thank you to the Butte America Radio Foundation for making this possible at 102.5. And lastly, this weekend is the Labor Day picnic from noon to 4 at Stodden Park, hosted by the Southwest Montana Central Labor Council. And I guess that's the last event I wanted to draw attention to. I had a couple of questions on some ongoing or upcoming projects, one being the bike lanes and parallel parking striping. That bid was awarded 3 weeks ago to a local contractor, and I believe we can expect to be seeing the paint hit the streets here in the next week or so. Butte-Silver has prepared the signage for these routes and these areas, and so we've prepared the signage. The contractor, as part of its job, is going to put up those signs as well. So we'll be seeing those changes and additions take shape here in the coming weeks or so. And then the welcoming area at the corner of Utah and Front Street has been receiving questions on when that's going to happen. We just got a notice to proceed from the State of Montana's Department of Transportation less than 2 weeks ago, even though this body all voted in favor of that quite some time ago. And so our contractor on that, our consultant on that, is putting together the bid package. We're going to get it out for bid, which after the 21-day period, we'll be lucky if we break ground on that this construction season. So I know Mr. Schultz and Nick and probably Lori Casey and John Cecil on our planning department will be conferring on whether or not it makes more sense to try and get a better price on the bid by going out to bid over the winter and then just doing it first thing in the springtime next year. So that concludes my chief executive report. So we will move into section 1, the consent agenda. Are there any friendly segregation or friendly amendments or segregations? We hope they're friendly segregations. Commissioner Anderson?
Thank you very much, Chief Executive. Could I segregate number 8, communication 15412, and communication 15, communication number 15420?
Okay. Commissioner Palmer?
I'd like to segregate communication B, number 1415-419.
Which one was that again, Commissioner Palmer?
Number 14.
Okay. Commissioner McDonough?
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. I'd like to segregate 16, communication 15-421.
And Commissioner Foley?
Thank you. I'd like to segregate number 1, 15-405.
Any others? Seeing none, Commissioner Shaw?
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. I move to approve Section 1 Consent Agenda A 1 through 6 and B Communications number 1 through 18 with the exception of item 1, 15-405, item 8, 15-412, item 14, 15-419, item 15, Communication 15-420, and item 16, Communication 15-421.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Nothing further. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. We'll take them in numerical order. So Commissioner Foley, 14-405, 15-405.
Thank you, Chief Executive. I'll try to make this short and sweet. This issue has been brought up, it has been discussed, it has been reviewed, it has been debated. There's been several different versions of it. It's been gone to several different departments. We've had the county attorney review it, and we can continue to do it again. Or we can put this to bed, and all due respect to the individuals that signed this petition and to Mr. Vanderoth. I think this body has spoken on this. If I'm wrong, then we can move forward on some other version. We discussed this. I offered a compromise version that didn't pass. So I also believe there comes a point in time where this body needs to act and be able to send a message one way or another that, if there's a support for this, we can move forward. If there isn't, there isn't. So I don't want to waste council's time on this anymore. So I'll make a motion to note and place communication 15-405 on file.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to place communication 15-405 on file being duly noted. On the question, Commissioner Purdue-Dolan.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. I ran into Mr. excuse me, I'm sorry. I ran into Mr. Banderob during a farmer's market, and I talked to him and I said, you're actually convincing me that town hall listening sessions are a good thing, that we need more public input, we need engagement. Where he still needs to convince me, however, is the fact that when these listening sessions and the running of them include public financing is where I miss the boat. I don't agree, but I haven't heard him yet say these need funding. So if and when it reaches that point, I will lose support. But if it's just listening, fact-finding advisory, and then giving it to the legislative branch of our county government, I'm all for it, because the more engagement we have, the more information we have, the better, because that means more people are giving us information, the more we have to go on. And that is a good thing. And so I applaud Mr. Banderob for his constant efforts, his seating here every week, and I'm sure Commissioner Foley agrees as well with his fact that Mr. Banderob is here. So I just wanted to state that, and but then the fact that that would be my cutting off point, spending taxpayer money. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Palmer.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. This communication once again boils down to whether or not citizens are allowed to form neighborhood councils. This council here has gone back and forth over the rules and regulations on how to set them up, and we never could come to an agreement. But at no point in time are we disallowing the citizens of Butte to form neighborhood councils. They're free to do so, and they can, if Centerville, Walkerville, anyone, the Greeley area wants to form a neighborhood council, they have all the rights in the world to do so. They can be, according to the charter, advisory to this commission, but they have every right to form that. And we just could not come to an agreement on what set of rules they should follow to do that, but we did not disallow them from doing that. We are not in going against our charter in any way. If the citizens want to form neighborhood councils, they're free to do so. And by voting this communication down, like the motion is made, it still does not stop the citizens from forming those councils.
Thank you, Commissioner Sorich.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. I can appreciate Mr. Vanderup's tenacity and also his persistence on trying to get this through. But after reading this, I went through the petition, and there's also a Montana Standard article. I had 0 phone calls, from anybody, wanting to set this up. I looked at the petition. There's 5 people on the petition out of 2,000 constituents. That's 25% of 1%, which is slim. And like Dan says, we are spinning a lot of wheels. We're spending a lot of time. Let's get this over.
On the question, Commissioner McDonough.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. I'd just like to weigh in on the fact that outside of listening sessions, this council sits on, at least one representative sits on numerous boards, up to 40. So besides our Wednesday night meetings and our committee meetings, the commissioners are pretty busy. I'm not trying to divert responsibility here, but we have numerous civic boards that we're required to sit on as well. So if you chop up 7 days, there's a lot of us that are in a meeting 3 or 4 days a week. And we're always open for public listening sessions. We have one every Wednesday night. It's here in this room in council chambers. It's a commission meeting. My phone that I pay the bill on is one. I mean, it's always on and it's always available, so somebody can call me whenever they want. But to think that we only meet Wednesday nights to listen to the public is incorrect. We're available all the time. And it's a pretty time-consuming commitment that we volunteer for. But I would just encourage you to think about when you might schedule all of these public listening sessions that we would then obligate ourselves to attend outside of all of the numerous meetings that we attend every week.
Commissioner Anderson.
Thank you. I'll be short and sweet. I support noting placing this on file. I appreciate all the work that you do. And we do have public listening sessions. We did have one last week, I guess 2 weeks ago, on the garbage collection. We had a public hearing here in this room. People got a chance to do that. We promoted it. We advertised it through the paper. People have that opportunity. We do have community council groups. We have the one that you lead in the Greeley neighborhood. We had one for the Emma Park neighborhood. I've been to a few of their meetings. There's one up in Walkerville. So these organizations do list. We just never put any bylaws into effect that have to follow, so they could do that themselves. And I think that gives them more power and more authority, really. And whenever they have any questions, comments, or concerns, I have numerous people who give me a call on a somewhat regular basis to get something. So if they need to get a hold of us, they know how to do it via email, via phone, or coming up here and sharing their opinion with us up at the council meeting. So thank you very much. And that's all I have.
Yeah, Will. So there's no mistaking where people stand on this. I would call for a roll call. So please cast your votes. All votes in. Clerk, can you please record?
Seven yay and one nay.
We gotta get a few.
I'll do it again.
Let's try her one more time. Hold on, folks. Withdraw your votes.
One more time.
Okay. Everybody cast their votes? Please record.
10 yay and 1 nay.
Okay, motion passes. Communication 15-412, Commissioner Anderson.
Thank you very much, Chief Executive. This communication was to John Sesso to allow the Chief Executive to sign an agreement. I was wary of this because there's no agreement provided. However, I just wanted to point everybody's attention that I sent an email this afternoon to Jeremy Gatzmiller to see if he might have a copy of it. He did not, but he did some legwork. He found Mr. Sesso, and he provided him the contract, and it was emailed to all of us. So if you do check your email, a copy of the contract is in there. Everything looks great. So I would concur with the recommendation to concur and place this on file.
Second. Okay, we have a motion and a second to concur and place on file.
And I'd like to thank Jeremy for a job well done.
Okay, duly noted. On the question, Commissioner Perdue-Dolan.
I just have a comment. We would like to thank Mr. Gatzmiller, but he continues to be in the hallway. I would like to invite him to come into our meeting. So if I could extend an invitation for him to come into our meeting so we could thank him.
You certainly can extend an invitation.
And if he could stay for our meeting, that would be great. Thank you. That's okay. We all have to survive this meeting, so that would be great if you could stay. Thank you.
Yeah, this is, I hate to be the one that always have to point to the charter, but under the restrictions of the legislative body, you are not allowed to direct members of the executive branch, Commissioner Purdue Dolan.
I'm sorry, I was just kidding. Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive.
You're welcome. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion passes. Communication 15-419, Commissioner Palmer.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. I would just like to change the recommendation a little bit to add concur and then refer it to the Economic Development Committee.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion to make that amendment as stated. Anything further on that question? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Communication 14-420, Commissioner Anderson.
Thank you very much, Chief Executive. I got a call this week, one of the many calls I do get from constituents, or hopefully soon to be constituents. But anyway, Mr. Moylan was concerned about the thing on this. He's been here quite a few times. He has shown a great interest in this property on Washington Street. And he called me, as I said, this week and asked me if I would segregate this so he could speak on it. So at this time, I would like, having segregated, I would call on Mr. Moylan to say a couple words on this matter.
Mr. Moylan?
Thank you. My name's Cameron James Moylan. I live in Bozeman at 1455 Hidden Valley Road. Thank you, Commissioner Anderson, for this chance to speak. I'm here before all of you for the last time before you make the final decision on who gets the property at 208 South Washington Street. Last Friday, I became aware of the Developer Packet Review Committee's request that the council award the property to Todd Brown and Jade Wetmore. While I am sure that this request was well-intentioned, I strongly feel that the decision which led to it was poorly made. In the written request by the review committee, it is stated that the Brown-Wetmore proposal outlines the most practical approach to the rehabilitation of this distressed property. However, a brief look at both proposals will reveal that this is not the case. The Brown-Wetmore proposal actually outlines the demolition of the largest building on the property and the severe alteration of another. My proposal details the restoration and future use of all three buildings. Their functional design will suit me and my merchandise business very well. And for me, this makes all of them well worth fixing. Another element of my proposal, which truly sets it apart from Mr. Brown's and Ms. Wetmore's, is how I plan on financing my project. I have saved and invested most of my income over the past 7 years with the goal of buying and renovating a property like this one. This and a lot of hard work has left me with over $75,500 at my disposal. Additionally, I should be making at least $3,500 a month through my merchandise business, which I plan on restarting here sometime in October. This figure is based on what I have made back in Bozeman and adjusted for the slower economy, which I expect to encounter here in Butte. I will dedicate most of my savings and future revenue toward restoring the Washington Street property over the next year. Mr. Brown and Ms. Wetmore do not have any finances set aside for developing this property. Their entire proposal hinges upon whether or not they can get a loan from the bank using their home as collateral. I learned all of this during their presentation to the Developers Packet Review Committee. If I am awarded this property, I will bring wealth to the city of Butte and Silver Bow County. In the short term, I will do this by moving here and investing most of my savings into 208 South Washington Street. In the long term, I will continue to bring wealth to the city through my business. I will advertise all of my merchandise items online, and from previous experience, I expect at least half of my customers to be from outside Silver Bow County. These long-distance sales will ensure that a constant flow of money will be coming into Butte through my business from the rest of the state and the country. As I grow richer, so will the city. And if I am allowed to purchase the Washington Street property, I will move there and I will live and work there, possibly for the rest of my life. I consider everything that I have proposed for this property to be a promise, including my firm commitment to always pay my property taxes on time. I've been through a lot while trying to buy this land, but that is not why I should get it. I should get it because I was the first of the current applicants to become interested in the property, and I offered the highest amount for it. Also, I am the only applicant who can afford to pay out of pocket for the costly repairs that I have proposed. And lastly, I believe that I will be the best owner for the place because I'll be so highly invested in it, and it will be my greatest asset. For me, being granted this property would be much more than just a really good thing. It would be everything. It is for all these reasons that tonight I ask all of you to please choose me as the next owner of this place, in spite of the request from the Developers Packet Review Committee. I may be young, but I'm very capable of doing what I have promised to do. And in about 2 months' time, when you pass by 208 South Washington Street and see how well my renovations are coming along, I guarantee that none of you will regret this decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Moylan. Commissioner Morgan.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. Mr. Moylan, just one quick question for you, or actually two of them.
Sure.
One, can you tell us what your merchandising business is? And two, have you checked with local zoning ordinances to make sure that it's approved in that area?
Sure. I plan on calling it the CJ Moylan Mercantile Company. I'll sell broad assortment of merchandise, basically anything from appliances to furniture, anything I can collect and resell again. It actually is in a residential district right now, but that doesn't make me want it any less. If it turns out that I cannot actually sell items from the property, I will just turn it into a strictly online business and turn the house in the alley into a rental instead of an office.
Okay, Commissioner Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive, and thank you, Cameron. It's nice to see you here, and you have a lot of enthusiasm, and I just wish half the people in town had that kind of enthusiasm. It's palpable. You can really tell that you're excited about this. And I wasn't here last week, and I didn't have the opportunity to hear the public hearing, so I did ask Karen Burns if she could just come up and I could ask her a couple of questions on
Sure.
the developer packet and the people that make up the board. So if you don't mind, I'm going to call on Karen. Thank you.
Absolutely. Ms. Burns?
Karen, first of all, okay, you can introduce yourself, but go ahead.
Thank you. I am Karen Burns, Director of Community Development for Butte-Silver. Commissioner Shaw, members of Chief Executive, Member of Council, I'm prepared to answer any questions you may have.
First, I wanted to know who actually is on the panel or the committee that makes the decisions.
The review committee for surplus property sales is made up of myself, the Land Records Director, Rob Makarowski, Ed Randall from Community Enrichment, Mary McCormick from Historic Preservation, Dave Schultz with Public Works, and Steve Hess from Planning.
Okay. And so give me an idea of your reasoning behind the selection of the candidate.
Sure. We take a very logistical approach to this. Each of the candidates' proposals are ranked on 6 different items. Each item is scored on a scale of 1 to 10, and each proposal is then, those points are totaled up. So then we can see in a ranking system which proposal we believe is most viable. Those points that we rank on, the first one is the amount, quality, and benefit to Butte-Silver Bow in accordance with the stated objectives in the developer's packet. The next one is the minimum threshold of improvement and investment. The third is adequacy of proposed financing. The next is the compatibility and conformity with the adjacent land uses, viability of the project schedule, and the developer's experience is the last. Each one of those is ranked 1 through, given 10 points as a max. And so then they're totaled up. And so as far as our review committee and their rankings of each one of these proposals, the Wetmore Brown proposal received a total of 242 points, and Cameron Moylan's proposal received 194 points. I can tell you the main areas that we believed were lacking in Mr. Moylan's proposal were his experience in ever taking on a project like this and his schedule for the project, and also the conformity with the adjacent land uses. It is not zoned for a business to me run in that area. It is zoned residential. And so we really felt like the developer's experience, their schedule, and also one thing that I'd like to point out as very important is the order in which these repairs are occurring on these buildings. The viability of the project schedule that was proposed by Jade and Todd was extremely focused on the most important parts of that property that are failing, which are the foundation. 24% of their resources that they are proposing to put into this project, which is a total of $92,000, 24% of that is going towards foundation repairs. There is no foundations under these buildings, basically. They are failing. And so we felt like taking all of those things into account and knowing the experience that we have with this type of project, that's how those projects were ranked.
And then last follow-up.
Follow-up.
Thank you. Karen, and the last thing I wanted to know is the question about finances. You know, we are not financial people, and we do defer. I like to defer as much as possible to the experts that are making these reviews. Are the proposed applicants that you're asking us to approve, they have something fixed as far as financing? Is the bank has approved financing to a certain amount, or?
They're in the process of getting approved for the additional financing they would need for this. This is a process that they've gone through before. It's not their first time in redeveloping a property. They're a known entity to financial institutions. This is something that they do. And I do believe that this is not going to be an issue for them. It was not an issue for us in the review committee when we weighed these proposals.
And have we approved other situations like this where the financing has not actually been, fixed or?
Yes, we have. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Karen.
Thank you. Commissioner Fisher.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. I understand what Karen and her committee are saying, but you don't get experience unless you get to do something. So that's kind of an invalid point to me. The only way you're going to get experience if you get to do a few projects, and that's how he's going to get his experience. The financing, there's no guarantee on the financing. This other guy, he's already got it, And the thing is, if anyone was here last Wednesday night and watched as Mr. Moylan presented at the public hearing, and he'd been here weeks before presenting to this council, if we were acting as a jury and listened to his side of the story, and then the other people sat in the back and never even came to the podium to speak of their proposal, they never had anything to say, good or bad, about what their proposal was. They waited just on the committee, a 5-person committee, because they felt they had the votes they needed to get it, whether their developer packet was better than the other one or not. So at this point, I think Mr. Mullen deserves to have this property far more than anybody. He's done the legwork. He's the one that offered us $5,500 for one and $2,000 over for the other one, and wasn't even recognized at that point. At this point, I would like to make a motion that we overturn the committee's recommendation and allow Mr. Moylan to purchase this property through the developer's packet. At this time, I'd like to make a motion on Communication 15-420 that Mr. Moylan be awarded this property.
Second.
Well, we have a motion and a second on the question. Ms. Burns.
Mr. Chief Executive and members of council, I'd just like to make a couple of comments relative to Mr. Fisher's comments about what was presented and what we do know about the adequacy of financing for either one of these proposals. What I'd like to point out that in Mr. Moylan's proposal, he states he has the funds. We have no proof that he has the funds. In the Wetmore-Brown proposal, they state they have adequate ability to get the funds. We don't have any additional proof of that either. So I would like to say those are on a level playing field for myself. Also, I'd like to state that Mr. Moylan has been very interested in these properties, and we understand that. He also had opportunities 2 times before developer's packet through tax sales to purchase these properties outright and not go through this process. That did not happen. This process is a public process. It allows all in the public to be able to put in a proposal for the highest and best use of a property. This is a procedure that we've had in place for many years. It's been extremely successful. I don't believe we've ever had more than, I think, maybe 2 failures over 65 or 70 properties. And so I think that our committee does a very good job at knowing how these are going to take place. And so I would stand by our recommendation fully.
Thank you, Karen. Commissioner Sorge.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. This is questions for Mr. Moylan. I wasn't here last week for the public hearing, so I just got a real quick question. Mr. Moylan, I seen on the very first communication you listed as 4020 East Valley Center Road as your address. Now you got 1455 Hidden Valley Road. Have you moved or what? I'm just kind of wondering what the deal is there.
Yeah, but it was more that I had my own house. It came with my job at the dairy. And I guess I was expecting to purchase these houses months ago. And so when I thought I was going to get them, I quit that job. And since that house came with a job, I ended up moving out of that house. And for the time being, I've been living at my parents' house, waiting for this whole thing to work out. I guess while I'm here, I'd just like to address a few things. As far as my experience goes, I actually have had some experience with hands-on construction anyway, as far as sweat equity goes, in repairing a building that was at that 4020 address for this very thing. But it was that building that taught me that it's important to own a place if you really want to do what you want to do with it. As far as the schedule goes, I plan on being finished by next July. And considering that winter's in between now and then, I think that's pretty reasonable. The foundations, I realize, are a huge problem, and they're one of my first priorities. I would be repairing them simultaneously with the roofs, since they are also a huge priority. Those are my first two things at the very top of my list of to-do things, to-do list. And the tax sales, when they happened, I didn't know about the property at that point. And I guess as far as the extreme success of the developer packet program, I would have to beg to differ. If you just look back to the Brinks and Deluxe buildings, I feel that was a very valuable property. That property actually alerted me to this whole process, and I probably would have tried to get that one, but I found out about it too late. Well, I was already demolished. I just feel that was a very valuable property, and the marketing for it was so poor that it couldn't even be sold for $500. Anyway, thank you all. And if you have any more questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Commissioner Fisher.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. As to respond to Ms. Burns' comments, as she said, neither one is guaranteed the funding, but one has to have another person input from the bank. He claims he has it. I mean, you kind of got to believe what you hear. And as far as the success of the developers packet, I kind of got to agree with Mr. Moylan that I don't see it as a large success. And, when this went out on developers packet, we got a report about 2 weeks before this came in, and somebody came in and they were all excited, said we had 13 people pick up forms, on the developers packet. And I said, well, is that 13, 6 on each or 8 on one? And they said, they picked up 12 or 13 on each property, Well, we had 2 properties. One property got two proposals, the other got 0. So we're still stuck with one property. And as far as the taxes, that he had 2 opportunities to buy, the other people had 2 opportunities to buy them also. So these are moot points. And as far as his business goes, that has nothing to do with it. He's trying to buy this property through a developer's packet, not a business proposal. So I go with my recommendation. Thank you.
I do actually have financing proof. I just didn't want to make it public.
Mr. Moylan, I think there's a motion and a second. I think you've had more than your share of opportunity to provide testimony and information. I guess I'm a little dumbfounded, in particular with you, Commissioner Purdue-Dolan. You portend to have so much concern for use of public resources and time. I don't know why we go to the trouble of establishing these boards, these procedures, only to waste the time of people that are paid for by the public dollar to have it come up here and then be overturned. I understand that there's exceptions to every rule, but these exceptions are becoming the rule. And I would just caution the folks up here. I mean, Commissioner, Mr. Moylan, you mentioned that you would look for a property like this to do your business, I would strongly recommend this council to go with the recommendation of the professionals who were on the selection committee for this property and who clearly chose the other developer's packet because of a number of reasons that we do not have time to discuss here tonight. And Mr. Moylan, we're not trying to send you down a path back to where you came from. That property will come. I just think that according to the findings of the group that has made this recommendation, that this isn't that property. So I will shut up at this point. And if there's more folks that want to speak out on this, that's fine. But we have a motion and a second. So I'm going to allow an opportunity for somebody else. Commissioner Fisher, I'll get back to you. Commissioner Ralph.
Thank you. Mr. Moylan, my heart goes out to you. I've seen you up here. You've been very passionate, very involved. Unfortunately, I do have to agree with the findings of the committee that the highest and best use of this property would be to go with the other developer. And if I were making my decision on emotions alone, it would be yours. But we have to kind of separate ourselves from our emotions up here. So I will make a substitute motion to concur with the original recommendation, which is to concur with the request to ask the county attorney to prepare a resolution and hold the committee in the committee of the whole.
That motion dies for lack of a second. Commissioner Fisher, back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. Chief Executive, I do agree with you a lot of points, but I'm highly insulted that you feel that committee, non-elected board, is more professional than the 12 of us sitting up here. We listened to this person for a good hour last week when you weren't even here. Karen wasn't here. A lot of them were here. We listened to it. And for you to call us unprofessional and the 5 people on the board professionals, that's an insult to me. Thank you.
Well, I will address that, Commissioner Fisher, and it's not, I didn't mean it as an insult. I meant professionals in their field. Dave Schultz was on that board. He's a professional engineer. Mary McCormick was on that committee. She is a professional historic preservation specialist. Dory was on this board. She's a professional landscape architect. It has nothing to do with the decision that you're trying to make here or any intentions. We hire these people and pay them very good salaries to work 40 plus hours a week and work in the best interests of this community. That's what they did. And what you're contending to do is overturn a lot of time, energy, and effort that was put in by the professionals that are working on behalf of this community. It doesn't matter whether they're elected or not elected. They're professionals in their field, and they've offered their recommendation here. And it's, I'm sorry, I agree with Commissioner Ralph. I feel for Mr. Moylan, and if we were making this on emotions alone, I'd be right alongside Commissioner Ralph, but we're not. We hire these people for a reason. There is a very high fidelity process that goes through on scoring these. You heard what the scores were. There was almost a 60-point difference between the two. It was not close. I mean, I'm sure we could ask some of the other members of that committee to give more professional technical reasons on why those decisions or recommendations were made. But this isn't about me trying to insult anybody up here. Commissioner Foley.
Thank you. If we sit back and listen to what's being said here tonight, it's sort of childish and sort of honestly a waste of everybody's time here. This is a house, you look at the structure here, 1884, pre-1884, 1900, valued at what? And we're sitting here debating and fighting over this. It's silly. It really is. And I think that's where this level of this council and the communication and level of relationship with the chief executive has come to. And I think it's appalling to the community and to the people out here. But the one thing I want to stress to the chief executive is that, yes, these are professionals that make the recommendation. But I sit on boards, and I think a lot of us sit on boards, and we make recommendations all the time. And a lot of times they're not followed. Right or wrong, good or bad, I could give you numerous examples just in the last 6 months. Is that wrong? Or is that the democratic process? Is that the process that we as commissioners are elected to do here? I question officials all the time. I question maybe what you do sometimes, and you question what I do, and that's called the political process. We as commissioners here have made a motion here, and I know where the feeling is that people will be offended by, this, and we overturn it, but I don't have a problem with that. Are we wrong if we make a mistake? There's pullbacks on this if he doesn't comply or the other developer doesn't comply. And the fact of the matter is, this whole situation, like I said, he was here before us, and it's one house of many historical homes in this town. He's come before us, presented. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work out. We shouldn't be sitting here debating and arguing over one little issue here. And it really, at the end of the day, it's not going to make that much a difference. I wish him well. I am going to support the motion because I believe he's sincere. I don't think since I've been on council, I've had anybody that's come up here with that passion and wanting to do something here. That to me makes a difference. He's shown the interest. And to me, the other developer hasn't. And that's no disrespect to the people on that committee because I've been there too. I've made recommendations and they haven't been approved. It's water off the back. That's part of the process. We have to do that. So I make a question or call a question to vote.
Very good.
Roll call.
Roll call vote. All votes in. Clerk, can you please record?
7 yay and 4 nay.
Okay, motion passes. Congratulations, Mr. Moylan.
Thank you all who made that happen. Thank you.
Wish you the best of luck.
Thanks.
Communication 15-421, Commissioner McDonough.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. After discussing this communication with Planning Director John Sesso, I'd just like to change the recommendation to concur with the recommendation and place on file, at which point the Planning Department will come back with the new communication to have the resolution or the ordinance, the ordinance change in front of the Judiciary Committee. So I make a motion to concur with their recommendation and place on file.
Okay, we have a motion to concur and place on file. Is there anything on the question? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Section 2, we have communications to be read and acted upon, starting with communication 15-425, which was added to tonight's agenda. Commissioner Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. This is communication 15-425. Again, it's from JP Gallagher, Parks and Recreation Director, and Matt Boyle on behalf of the original festival. I will call on JP if he wants to just give us a quick rendition of what's happening here, and we can make a motion.
Thank you, Commissioner Shaw. Chief Executive and Commissioners, I brought this before in the emergency edition because we have the original festival coming up. The process had been started back in June, and with that, Matt Boyle had submitted most of the paperwork. He had a tragedy in his family. Some of this stuff got delayed a little bit, and I was actually out of town last week at training as well as he brought some of the things in. So to obtain the signatures, obtaining the signatures that were needed required me to put this on the emergency.
Thank you. Are there any questions for JP or Mr. Boyle since he is in the audience? Commissioner Anderson?
I would just like to say that I support this motion fully. I know that the original festival has really improved over the years. Great benefit to you, Mr. Boyle, and I offer you, as I'm sure we all do, our heartfelt condolences over your loss. I can't imagine the pain that you've been going through and just how much that can just throw your world in a tailspin. I really think that doing the right thing here and just support this.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Shaw?
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive, and thank you for that update, and the best of luck to you, Matt. I think your event has turned around, and I really wish you the best. I hope you have good weather, and we'll look forward to it. So at this time, I would make a motion to concur with communication 15-425 and place it on file.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there anything on the question? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Communication 14-422, Lori Casey, Assistant Planning Director, Butte-Silver Bow Planning Board, requesting council's conditional approval of the preliminary plat of the Aspen Lane minor subdivision. Miss Casey or Mr. Sesso, I guess, if there's anything.
Are you on 14?
Yeah. 15-422. Commissioner Morgan.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. Just so this body knows, I made the mistake on placing this to be read and acted upon when I set the agenda last week. Standard protocol, looking through it. At this time, unless anybody has any questions, I would make a motion to concur with communication 15-422 and place this communication on file.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion on and a second. Is there anything on the question? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Section 3, see the following. Section 5. Okay, my bad. There's an additional communication on those resolutions that are to be added to Section 5. So Commissioner Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. Communication 15-426, I'm going to call on Kathy Maloney to give us an explanation without my reading through the entire communication. Kathy?
Hello, Commissioner Shaw, Chief Executive, Commissioners. You have very difficult jobs, as well as mine turned out to be. The tightness of the deadlines and the reporting. There were errors caught luckily before the measure goes to the assessor that is going onto the tax roll. Ramsey School had missed their technology levy, and it was caught by the treasurer's office and the budget and finance office and myself. So we rectified that, and they are adding 9.2 mils for their technology, but they passed a levy in May. It wasn't put into their bookkeeping. And the other one was the statewide GTB mill amount was last year's numbers and their percentages. So the transportation did not increase. I had it at 3.95 when I reported it to you on Monday night. It is now 3.54. The elementary retirement mills were at 24.61. They are now at 23.58. And the high school retirement mills were at 11.64, and they're now at 11.06. And I apologize for inconveniences and special meetings and really tight deadlines, and I'm grateful that I have a county that's helping me figure this out.
Any questions for Ms. Maloney? Commissioner Shaw?
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. At this time, I would move to concur with communication 15-426 and place it on file.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion to concur and place on file. There's nothing on the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Ordinances and resolutions of Section 3 refer to the judiciary. Moving to Section 4, ordinances on second reading. Clerk, can you please read the title?
Council Bill number 15-13, ordinance number 15-13, an ordinance amending Chapter 8.08 entitled Litter Control of the Butte-Silver Bow Municipal Code, specifically amending Section 8.08.010, 8.08.020, 8.08.060, 8.08.070, 8.08.80, and adding new Section 8.08.110, and renumbering previous sections 8.08.110 through 8.08.130 as sections 8.08.120 through 8.08.140, and providing for an effective date herein.
Thank you, Commissioner Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. I move to place Council Bill number 1513 and ordinance number 15-13 on second reading and passed, having been deemed fully read at length.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there anything on the question? On the question, Commissioner Purdue Dolan.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. I just have a question about this ordinance and the litter control, about who is going to do the enforcement of the litter control once it's deemed an ordinance for the citywide.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Purdue-Dolan. Mr. Schultz, would you care to answer the commissioner's question?
Mr. Chief Executive, Commissioner Purdue-Dolan, the ordinance contains a lot of provisions regarding, just like it does now, when cans can be put out, when they're brought back in, covers on the cans, no litter around the cans, all that type of thing. And this will be enforced much like most of our ordinances are enforced, whether it's shoveling your sidewalk or watering your lawn on the proper day. It'll be enforced by our having conversations typically with the homeowners. We find that in the vast majority of cases, problems are rectified with a simple conversation. So I would anticipate that this would be no different.
Follow-up?
Mr. Schultz, who will do those conversations?
Mr. Chief Executive, Commissioner Purdue-Dolan, I suspect that it would be myself. Calls come in. A call will come into the maintenance center. A call will come into my office. And oftentimes, the problem will be handled by the person taking the calls, whether it's Jennifer Kearns at the Corral, Lena Worrell in our office. It could get referred to myself. It could get referred to Jow. I can't say exactly who the person would be, but typically we end up having a conversation with the homeowner as a result of a complaint call.
Okay. Commissioner Henderson?
Mr. Chief Executive, Dave, the one question I got is, what is the hurry getting this through, and why didn't we wait till we did garbage and tried it out in all areas instead of just these couple pilot places that were naturally, as I said before, the easiest place to do it? Why did we have to hurry into it instead of trying all over to see if it fit all over and if the people were happy with it all over?
Mr. Chief Executive, Commissioner Henderson, as the council is aware, the pilot program is a fairly expensive thing to do. I forget what we spent on this, but it was some considerable dollars. And that was intended to try it out in a typical area of the flats and a typical area of the hill. The real compelling thing was that our existing garbage contract expired July 1. You folks allowed us to extend that till November 1, but that's what compels us to make a decision now on how we collect garbage so that we know how to go out to bid for the next contract. It's just driven by the calendar. It's driven by the fact that we have a contract that's expiring.
Follow-up? Mr. Chief Executive, I don't agree with it because I just feel that it was done in areas that were almost the same way with dragging your garbage out to the street and everything else, like the country club and stuff. A little bit up on the west side, a little harder, but there's a lot harder places to do this. And I still am not convinced that people will like that program. And I think they should be able to get a whack at it before, it's shoved down them by us voting for it. So I totally agree that there was one other question I had for you too, Dave, was you say everybody has to have a garbage by a container, right?
Commissioner, you mean under this new program, Commissioner
Right.
Anderson? No, sir. I believe that the ordinance is constructed such that the containers provided to them.
Right. But I mean, everybody has the same container.
I believe the ordinance is written that each household will have a 95-gallon container. Yes, sir.
Right. Now, does that mean trailer courts in that were, let's just take, for instance, I'm not picking on any certain area, but let's just take, for instance, down off of Locust or Silver Bow or that, when you go through there, and that's private, and they pick up their garbage. And as a previous garbage man years ago, I remember that was some nasty stuff down there in the alleys and that. And I'm sure Mr. Sorich gets calls on that area also. Now, will they have to have that same 95-gallon container so that it cleans the alleys and keeps the streets clean and everything?
Mr. Chief, Commissioner Henderson, I don't know the specific area that you're describing, but the ordinance is intended like it is now, where each homeowner buys their own cans and has them out behind their house or out front of their house. This ordinance contemplates the same thing, to where they would have one of these rolling 95-gallon containers for each household.
But you don't have a choice to not do it, right? If somebody opts out, like say Mr. Fisher and Mr. McDonough opt out in their particular address, can they opt out of the garbage service?
Mr. Chief Executive, Commissioner Anderson, no, they cannot. The way the ordinance is written, which is how it's been for 25, 30 years, if you live within the geographical area that we consider the garbage collection district, you are obligated to pay for garbage collection. Yes, sir.
Right, and that's what I thought. Now, what about when we're talking about beautification and everything, what about these trailer court areas and that where the garbage is picked up by the individual owner or whatever's, that owns the trailer court and that? And what about them? Do they have to purchase that container for each household?
Mr. Chief Executive, Commissioner Henderson, the ordinance that we have now and the one that we're recommending that you pass are the same, in that commercial accounts, if this would be a commercial account that's picked up under contract with the owner of the trailer court, are not something that we deal with. This government does not deal with commercial accounts. In this community, it's McGree Trucking contracts directly with all commercial accounts for their pickup. So the rules of this ordinance only apply to the non-commercial accounts. I'm not sure I'm answering your question, but that's the best I know.
No, Mr. Chief Executive, not really. You're not answering it because, I'm very familiar with this situation, and it's not only, Locust or Elm, or it's out there at the 4 Mile. It's, I'm talking about these, I'm not going to say trailer courts, but I'm going to say strings of trailer in certain streets and that, and they're owned by a private individual. And sometimes the garbage gets dumped and sometimes it don't. I live next to it on Elm Street, so I know. And when you're talking about why we're doing this to clean up this city and everything, and some of that's not even being addressed. Perhaps Ms. Io addressed that or something. I don't know.
Well, Mr. Chief Executive, Commissioner Henderson, if those properties are assessed on their taxes for garbage collection, then those households will be obligated to have one of these rolling containers for collection of their garbage. I don't know the areas you're discussing and whether or not they are part of the garbage collection program. Perhaps these trailer parks, the owners of them contract separately for garbage pickup. If he does, then it's what I described earlier. But if those properties are assessed for garbage collection services, then the homes on those properties will have one of these containers. And it seems that should help clean things up.
I mean,
you can cast that vote right where you need to, Commissioner Henderson.
Mr. Chief Executive, I just know I've been down that road and I've seen it right next door to me. And so I know that, a certain individual comes with his dump truck private, and sometimes it gets dumped when he can. And then it's in the alleys. And I'm sure I hate to be the guy to be talking about this right out in the open but that's a big part of all this stuff in the alleys and everything that we're trying to straighten out with this new program, but it's not even being addressed, and we have a considerable amount of them. And so I don't understand why each individual house trailer, same as a house, same as their house, they don't all have the garbages the same way.
And I would hope that they do. And you may be bringing something to light that I'm unaware of, so I would hope that we can get this ordinance passed. And if what you're describing is correct, we could always amend it to where those trailers would have to have. If they're not required now, we could amend it to where they would have to have a container.
Mr. Schultz, Commissioner Henderson, Finance and Budget Director Gleason believes she can add something to this to help maybe answer your question. Ms. Gleason?
Yeah. Chief Executive Vincent, Commissioner Henderson, for the record, I'm Danette Gleason, the Finance and Budget Director. I think some of the questions alluding to who gets SIDs attached to their property, that means the garbage, the district that they're in and the garbage. So it's based on the owner of the land. So if a trailer court, if the person that has a trailer and owns the personal property, a trailer is considered personal property, not real property. But if they own the land underneath it, the garbage assessment is attached to the land that's underneath it as real property. If they live in the trailer court and they're renting the spaces from an individual who is basically a commercial account because a corporation or a nonprofit or a profit for-profit agency or something owns that trailer court, then that's a commercial property. And so per the ordinance, the commercial property owner is responsible for the collection of so that's why you see the big dumpsters at some of those locations, is because each individual property owner of those trailers are considered personal property, and we can't assess or attach because there's not land associated with it.
Commissioner Anderson.
Mr. Chief Executive, that's exactly what I was talking about, because they do not own the property. I'm not talking about people that have, say a certain yard and that, and they own the property and they have a trailer. And I was talking about trailer in a court. And so they pay commercial for garbage then. Is that what you're saying? When they just rent the ground? Pay a monthly fee for their ground?
Chief Executive Vincent, Commissioner Henderson, from my understanding, that is exactly how it works. The owner of the trailer court itself runs it through McGree, and they do the pickup in the big dumpsters, or they control it. We can only attach an assessment to a land. We can't attach to real property. We can't attach it to a personal property, and trailers are considered personal property for the most part.
People are going to think they tuned into the Dennis Henderson show. They're listening to this on the radio.
Thank you, Mr. Executive.
Commissioner Anderson.
I hope they don't think they turned into the Anderson show. There was some allusion to the alleys and the shape of the alleys and keeping them cleaner. In the poll that Zhao's been doing, that was the email of the past few days, the alleys have been a lot cleaner, it's been reported, in these pilot areas. And when you look at some of the photos we got in the email from Mr. Baroni, it shows cans scattered all over the place and garbage things tipped over and piles of bag just stacked on top of each other, on top of each other, on top of each other. And that's when the dogs are getting into them, and that's when they're getting blown around. They don't have lids on. This program eliminates all of that. We have a big container that is hard, damn near impossible for a dog to knock over. Over where my brother lives, he has a similar can. The Doberman next door was trying to get into it. The labs try to get into it, and they'll just run into them. You can't knock them over. They have a big, heavy lid. It will keep the alleys a lot cleaner, and I think it's a wonderful program. I think it's been well thought out. I love the recycling aspect of it, and I think that we should continue to send this down the road and pass it.
There is a motion in a second.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. Just one comment. I would like to see the survey that was sent out. I read through it for the first time today, the total survey, read the numbers, and they all, are pro the pilot program. I would like to see a survey that went out to the 800 constituents that had this, just a yes or no. Do you like this program better, or do you like the old program? A real simple question, rather than having it ask all these questions and then prepping up to a final answer. I would just like to see a yes or no, even if we only got a couple hundred response. Yes or no, which one you prefer would be better than the questions we're asking. Thank you.
Thank you. So with nothing further on the question, this is a roll call vote. So
Can I
please
get a
cast your
restatement of
votes. Excuse me?
Can I get a restatement of the motion?
Yeah, restatement of the motion, Commissioner Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Chief.
You've got this down pat, so I figured.
Okay, this is Council Bill 15-13, ordinance number 15-13. I move to place both that bill and that ordinance on second reading and passed, having been deemed fully read at length.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
All votes in? Okay, clerk, can you please record?
8 yea and 3 nay.
Okay. Moves to second reading, second one. Clerk, can you please read?
Council Bill number 15-12, ordinance number 15-12, an ordinance amending section 17.060.030 of the Butte-Silver Municipal Code, which section adopted the zoning map of Butte-Silver, State of Montana, providing for a change to the original zoning district map by rezoning an area presently zoned R-1, one family residence zone, to C-2, Community Commercial Zone. The area of land consists of 2.58 acres, more or less, and is legally described as Remainder-2, Certificate of Survey 796-B of Section 19, Township 3 North, Range 8 West of the PMM of the City and County of Butte-Silver, State of Montana, generally located north of Olympia Street, south of Butte Town Center, and west of the 1300 block of Harrison Avenue, providing for the repeal of all parts of ordinances in conflict herewith and providing for an effective date herein.
Thank you. Commissioner Shaw?
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. I move to place Council Bill number 15-12, ordinance number 15-12, on second reading and passed, having been deemed fully read at length.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. There's nothing on the question. Please cast your votes. All votes in. Clerk, can you please record?
11 yea and 0 nay.
Okay, passes. Section 5, we have suspension of the rules for final passage where we added the previous resolution amendments. So Commissioner Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. I would move, I move for the suspension of the rules for the purpose of passing council resolutions number 15-28, resolution 15-36, and resolution 15-40 by waiving subsection 7 of Rule 36 of the Rules and Order of Business of the Council of Commissioners, thereby having it considered for advanced passage without reference to the Judiciary Committee.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to suspend the rules for those three stated resolutions. This is a roll call, so please cast your votes. All votes in. Clerk, please record.
11 yea and 0 nay.
Okay, motion passes. So resolution 1528. Clerk, can you please read the title?
Resolution number 15-28, a resolution establishing criteria for the classification of unsold tax deed lands, determining that certain property should be held in city-county ownership of compelling public interest, ordering certain parcels of real property be held in city-county ownership, and providing for an effective date herein.
Thank you. Commissioner Shaw?
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. At this time, I move to place Council Resolution 15-28 on final reading and passed, having been deemed fully read at length.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Can you please cast your votes? All votes in. Clerk, can you please record?
11 yea and 0 nay.
Okay, resolution passes. On 15-36, Commissioner, Clerk, can you please read? I think we just need to.
Resolution number 15-36, a resolution fixing the mandatory tax levy for various county-wide funds of the school districts within the city and county of Butte-Silver at a rate which will raise the amount set out in the final budget as the amount necessary to be raised by tax levy for each fund for fiscal year 2015 through 2016, and providing for an effective date herein.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. Just so my fellow commissioners know what happens next, there are three motions that I need to make. One is to move to reconsider, next to move to amend if that is approved, and then finally, if that is approved, to move to approve the resolution with the amendments. Just so you know, that's what I'm doing here. So here goes. First of all, I move to reconsider Council Resolution number 15-36.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion to reconsider communication 15-36. Is this a roll call? Roll call vote, so please cast your votes. All votes in. Clerk, please record.
11 yea and 0 nay.
Okay, so reconsidered it is. Commissioner Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. At this time, I would move to amend Council Resolution number 15-36. This is on the red line version. And specifically, I'm amending line 17, which reads elementary retirement, which was originally $24.61, the mill levy, and it has been changed to $23.58. Line 18, and the fund is the high school retirement fund. The mill levy was originally $11.64. It is now $11.06. Line 19, the fund is the county transportation fund. The mill levy was originally $3.95, and it is being changed to $3.54. In line 20, the total mill levy, after it's been recalculated, was $95.20, is now $93.18, and that is what we would be voting on as far as amendments. So I'd move to amend Council Resolution number 15-36 with those amendments.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to make the stated amendments. Nothing on the question. Please cast your votes. All votes in, clerk, please record.
11 yea and 0 nay.
Okay, resolution passes. Commissioner Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. At this time, I move to approve Resolution 15-36 with the amendments.
Second.
Okay, motion to approve with amendments. Nothing on the question. Please cast your votes. All votes in. Clerk, can you please record?
11 yea and 0 nay.
Okay, motion passes. Now is the point for any public comment on matters that, do we have another one?
15-40.
Oh, that's right, 3. Commissioner Shaw.
Could the clerk please read?
Clerk, can you please read?
Resolution number 15-40, a resolution fixing the tax levy for the various funds of Ramsey Elementary School District Number 3 at a rate which will raise the amount set out in the final budget as the amount necessary to be raised by tax levy for each fund for fiscal year 2015 through 2016, and providing for an effective date herein.
Thank you, Commissioner Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. Again, the drill is that I would move to reconsider Council Resolution number 15-40.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion to reconsider. Please cast your votes. All votes in. Clerk, can you please record?
11 yea and 0 nay.
Okay, motion reconsidered. Commissioner Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. At this time, I move to amend Council Resolution number 15-40 as per the red line version. Line 16, we're adding a technology fund of $9.20. And then line 17 recalculates the total mill levy. It went from $97.21, and the new figure is $106.41. So I would move to approve Council Resolution number, I move to amend Council Resolution number 15-40 with those additions.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion to amend as stated, Resolution 15-40. Is there anything on the question? Seeing none, please cast your votes. All votes in. Clerk, please record.
11 yea and 0 nay.
Okay, resolution passes.
The amendment.
Now
The
the
amendment passes.
amendment passes. Clerk, can you please?
No, to move to approve the amendment.
Now we move to approve the amendment. So Commissioner Shaw.
Actually, at this time, I move to approve the resolution number 15-40 with the amendments.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Please cast your votes. All votes in. Clerk, please record.
11 yea and 0 nay.
Okay, resolution passes.
Got through that.
Good. All right. Now is the time for public comment on any matters that were not on tonight's agenda. Thank you for your patience.
Yep. My name is Dan O'Neill, for those of you that don't know. And I'd first like to thank Mike for staying here, because this is a matter that's pretty important to me. I hope that it makes it into the papers tomorrow. But first, before I make a comment, I'd like to ask a question. And how many years have we had a planning department? Does anyone know the answer to this?
It's just a public comment period.
Okay, well, so you don't have to answer. I was on the planning board 10 years ago, so it's got to be at least 10 years. I received a request for quote for 2 projects from the planning department. One was for scown fields to plant and do a soil stabilization and vegetation. And one was for Missoula ball fields from the planning department. I responded to the planning department about 2 weeks ago, 2.5 weeks ago with a quote. I received a response from Julia Crane that they had approved the Missoula ball fields and they were going to hold the Scown Field project until the following construction season. So I received this construction agreement from the city, and there was items in here that were not specified as part of this request for quote. And specifically, it was just the items that I listed to Julia. There was a requirement to post a sign with my pay rates, which I was not against. I said that I'd have to impose a fee on Butte-Silver to put the sign up because the cost of the sign wasn't in my original proposal, and it was just made known in this construction agreement. And then I asked her if, I said I've never seen a sign on a job site in Butte-Silver with the labor rates posted as well as the contract posted. The second item was prevailing wage and the requirement to pay prevailing wage, which I was not opposed. I'll just read a quick 3 paragraphs. I have a predetermined cost per plant, all costs factored, labor charges based on a crew of 3 people is Excel spreadsheet with all my known and actual costs included. If I know there's going to be a surcharge in the cost of the plant, higher or lower delivery charges, labor and materials, etc., I can account for those. There are cost fluctuations such as fuel that may occur 1, 2, or 6 months after the proposal is accepted. And in many cases that can add between $500 and $1,000, which is pretty nominal for a landscaping. You know, talk about road construction, could be in the 20, 30, 50,000. Anyways, that being said, BSB contract requires me to pay Davis-Bacon wages. I'm never opposed to earning or paying Bacon wages. However, I did not submit my quote based on the wage chart or certified payroll because it was not specified in this request for quote that I received. At this point in the season, it is likely that I'll have to bring on a temporary general laborer. That person may be a current or former member of the CCCS pre-release program. I am opposed to paying wages to a part-time new hire convict pre-releaser when I have other employees who actually have earned and deserve those wages. All above, the main issue is that I have this quote and it did not factor Davis-Bacon wages. The increased labor could represent a 25% increase. In an ideal season, I have a foreman earning 15 to 17, an experienced labor earning 12 to 14, and a general labor earning 10 to 12, which is pretty low wages. Bacon requirements would pay all of them the same rate, and my class code does not include operators, so I'd have to factor that. I submitted an invoice that she requested for 50%, which was part of the contract. And as of the date of acceptance, which part of the original quote was that availability changes week to week at the growers. So I submitted the final plant list to my grower. They came back and they said, here's what we have. There was a difference of $471.15 to do it as quoted. We could have gone larger or smaller. The previous conversation was to go with more mature, larger plants. So I submitted all the invoice, the license, insurance certifications, and everything that this contract required, along with some of the issues that I pointed out. And then I got a response today that that she appreciates me bringing these issues to her attention. Your review of our contract was very thorough and brought to light many requirements we assumed were understood, but should be more clearly requested in a request for quotes. I've reviewed the attached modifications in addition to the original quote submitted on August 6, 2015. Again, I assume those factors were factored into your original quote. We now have a quandary. It would be unfair for us to hold you to your original quote, and at the same time, additions to a quote are not typical and we don't have authority to approve. Therefore, our legal counsel recommends we start the process again. Given the time of the year and availability of nursery stock, we've decided to ask for new quotes in February of 2016 with contractor selection in place by March to allow for work to begin in April. In February, we will issue a much more specific request for quotes that factors in many issues you brought to our attention. My hope is that you will resubmit a quote for the Missoula Street project this winter. So my issue is that this is end of the season. I already received the contract for 15 years. You guys think this kid's done a good job for coming here for 4 months? I've been coming here for 15 years. I've been submitting quotes to the city, to these contractors. This is the first time in 15 years I've gotten a quote. And then it gets yanked? I mean, honestly, is this some sort of joke? So I wanted to make this known because obviously it was taken off the agenda. And basically, I have comments and questions that over the years I'd like to know, maybe the council should know, because she's rescinding it based on the lack of authority to approve, where in the contract, the last page.
Mr. O'Neill?
Yeah.
I mean, I appreciate your opportunity to make these comments on the public record, but it's not going to amount to anything being resolved here tonight. If you'd like to
it's
come
a
into my
comment.
office tomorrow, I can get the appropriate people assembled so we can address some of these questions and concerns. But like I said, I mean, even me interacting with you in this fashion is not appropriate for the rules of order for the council. Again, I appreciate your opportunity to make these comments, but I'd like to actually help resolve something for you.
Well, and the reason I think it is appropriate is because the first line item of approval in the contract is council approval. So I'm taking the first step. That's before Matt Vincent, before Sally Hollis, before Eileen Joyce, before Dan O'Neill contractor. So I think it's appropriate for me to make these comments. Anyways, that's really, there's more, but I think that's past my 3 minutes and it gets to the point that I'm trying to make. The contract, I guess my main comment and problem is that, so this gets resubmitted, the number's already out there. I mean, what's to say that the next contractor, whether it's myself or another competitor, doesn't submit the same quote for, $50 less. Now I got to play a guessing game because my numbers might be out there for the public to, look at. So, now it's just not my costs involved, but now it's got to refactor everything in. So I'd ask, well, can we just get this approved? We'll do it this time. And so anyways, that's just basically to bring this to light because it's really frustrating.
Appreciate that. I would ask you to contact my office in the morning. Is there any other public comment on matters that were not on tonight's agenda?
My name is Kevin Lowney, 1604 Silver Bow Homes. Mr. Vincent made me aware before the meeting that he was made aware that I would be arriving here tonight to speak, since I did some research with city employees this week. Anyway, before we begin, I wonder if we could take a moment, just a moment, to do some good old metacognition. which was mentioned last week at the city council meeting. And just for those of you who don't know, metacognition is thinking about thinking. Now, isn't that just exactly what we want the two managers of the Art Chateau to be spending our city tax dollars on? Or maybe we should focus more on open mic nights or singer-songwriter nights, so one of them can promote her music career. Even more importantly, let's show off our thesis on Irish history. After all, we did spend 1 year in Ireland. But let's carefully leave out the role of Catholic involvement in Irish culture and history because we are anti-Catholic. And of course, this all should be done since one of the prior owners of the Art Chateau was Irish. Why not do these things? You see, we're not from Butte. We find making a living off the history of your fathers, paid for in blood, easy pickings due to the openness and naivety of the Butte people. Oh, and if funds are transferred from the over $1 million allotted to the Butte archives into our pockets, not to worry. The city council won't find out until after this happens because they have chosen to turn the other way until monies have been spent. I say Butte is sacred ground, and woe to you who tread on it for self-absorbed and self-seeking purposes.
Thank you, Mr. Lowney. Any other public comment? Seeing none, we'll move to the calendar of other meetings and events. Please take note. Does anyone have anything to add?
Enjoy the Labor Day weekend. And I think there's a picnic. We have one on Monday.
At noon to 4
Noon to 4
at
at
Stodden Park. Motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
Second.
Nothing on the question. All those in favor?
All right.
Opposed? Meeting adjourned.